Today on Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out, we're talking about PSYCH K'ed. How can your subconscious mind hold you back? Are you feeling not worthy and it's affecting your health? Do you have limiting beliefs that are causing you stress? Let's continue our month focused on hodgepodge as we learn about the power of PSYCH K'ed.
Ready to clear your clutter and share your gifts with the world? Every Tuesday at 1 p.m., join award-winning professional organizer, author, and certified life coach Julie Coraccio on Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out as she teaches you how to navigate the waters to declutter your life. Julie Coraccio destroys the box and examines clutter in all areas.
Today's episode was inspired by yours truly. I am currently working with today's guest, and how this came about was when I was doing last month, in April's episode, I had found that Bruce Lipton interview, and I'm going to encourage you. I know some of you like the shorter podcast, worth the hour long to listen to Bruce. And I reread his 10th anniversary edition. So anyway, I'm rereading it, and it talks about PSYCH K'ed. Did a consultation over the phone. She had me fill out a form, and the reason I read about Bruce and his power, and then before I decided to work with Teresa, she's like, watch these short videos. And so one video showed the power of a woman was pregnant with the embryo, and as a couple was fighting, how that affected the child. I was completely blown away by that because they did a scan or x-ray or whatever it was, and you see the baby reacting. And then the person who created PSYCH K'ed had a short interview, and he talked about the spiritual aspect. I consider PSYCH K'ed to be very science-oriented, and because it's rewiring the brain, we'll see what Teresa says. That's how I would sum it up. But he talked about the spiritual aspect, which is really important for me. And the reason I was motivated to talk to her, you all know I worked with someone for almost 4 years, and at the end of working with her, I had one goal in mind. There was something I was trying to accomplish. She basically said, well, your sovereign self, your higher self, chose for you not to have this accomplished in this life. I didn't believe that. That did not ring true to me. But when you work for someone for as long as almost 4 years, and I'm not claiming to be a victim here. I made choices. I allowed myself to be influenced. So I want to be really clear on that. I believe as someone who works with people, you have an obligation to be honest and forthright. And if I'm honest, I would have preferred, well, you could have told me that before 4 years, and I could have decided that you could have given me a choice than whether to decide to work with you anyway. So that was really devastating to me. And that happened in the fall, and watched the Bruce interview, read the book. Anyway, found Teresa, and I just felt there had been too much influence. And I wanted to make sure, one, because you can rewire, I didn't want any of this person's influence and thoughts. I wanted them out. I said, I want to discover my truth and honor my truth. So anyway, PSYCH K'ed was about rewiring the brain, and then Teresa recommended a book that I'm really slow reading. I've read a bunch, and the more things it's taking me longer than I'd like, but you know what? Sometimes you have to roll with it. Had a little session with her, have worked with her a couple sessions, still have some sessions left. And through muscle testing and rewiring and doing things to reset my brain, because I've said often, you can learn how to get organized. You can learn how to clear your clutter. It's a skill I believe I'm just kind of innate. That doesn't mean you can't learn it. And I've been so impressed with PSYCH K'ed. I'm looking at taking their beginning class, and really bummed out because they had a class that was going to happen in Raleigh, but Tony's 50th birthday is that weekend, and I'm planning lots of fun stuff. So that was out. But if there's a class that's in the area, I'm really considering taking that because I'm so interested and fascinated. And so the work I've done with Teresa, I wanted to have her on as a guest. What I loved about it is the founder merges science and spirit, and he's coming from that spiritual perspective, which is really important to me. Teresa Bruni nationally recognized intuitive healer and health and wellness coach and speaker, is the missing piece to the wellness team of anyone suffering from chronic illness or pain who has not found relief through Western medicine alone. Teresa's path to becoming a healer became clear after battling a chronic condition that lasted nearly a decade, rendering her completely disabled. When she realized that the medical community simply didn't have the answers she needed, she knew she had to take matters into her own hands, and she did. Since discovering the missing pieces and being fully recovered since 1999, she is now on a mission to share what she learned to help and heal others. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
So let's get started because we've got lots of good stuff to talk about today. How does the subconscious mind work, and how can it be holding us back from creating the life we desire?
Well, there's a lot involved in that, and I know our time is limited, so I'll try to just cut to the chase. Most of us know we have two minds, our conscious mind and then our subconscious mind. And we use our conscious mind all the time to make decisions, to write things down. Our subconscious mind, on the other hand, is running on autopilot. And the subconscious mind has two jobs. The first job is to keep us alive. So it keeps our heart beating, it keeps our digestive tract working. We don't have to think, oh my goodness, I have to stop and breathe. It's making our eyes blink. So its first job is to keep us alive, and its second job is to keep us safe and keep us out of harm's way. And so that's where the problems can often come from. From the time we are born, we begin to get programmed by people who are very caring and loving in most cases, and they want to keep us safe. So, children are told, be careful out there.
Mm-hmm.
A big one for my dad was because he wanted to keep us in, the roads are wet, it's too dangerous. When I was a teenager, the roads are wet, it's too dangerous. So here I come into adulthood, and I still have this belief that has been programmed into my mind, the roads are wet, it's too dangerous. These limiting beliefs come from all different types of places, that from our parents, our teachers, clergy, even experiences. We've all had the experience where maybe we walk into a room and everyone bursts out laughing, and we immediately assume that they're laughing at us, when really they're not. Something happened right before we walked into the room. So these limiting beliefs come from many different places. And then the most devastating limiting belief, a serious car accident, watching someone you love be hurt, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, watching someone else be physically abused. I mean, even 11 was traumatic for most Americans.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So what we need to remember is the subconscious mind records everything, and it never forgets anything. So then we become these people who are trying to accomplish living a happy life. And we've got this program running in our subconscious mind. According to Bruce Lipton, author of The Biology of Belief, the subconscious mind, it runs 95% of the time, and the conscious mind only 5%. So we know what's driving the train. It's the subconscious mind.
I talked about in the introduction and how I'm working with you. And one of the things that was really important to me is I'd worked with someone else and felt completely influenced. Now, I don't play the victim here. I have to own it. But her thoughts, I knew they weren't my truth. But because I'd worked with her for so long, that was one of the motivating reasons to see you, is I feel like there's too much influence. We have to get down to my truth. And so even if you're aware, and I consider myself aware and on top of it more so than the average person, you can still have those challenges.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect example, because that is someone that you trusted and admired who hurt you. And so, when you and I first met, you were skeptical and you were cautious about, stepping into this relationship and trusting me as a practitioner, right?
Absolutely, I was.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being completely, how would you rate the work we did on that as far as clearing that out of your subconscious?
I think we're at a 9. There's probably, which for me is pretty good because our work is ongoing. So I still have so looking at it as a whole, and there's some things that I want to clear, but we do the kinesiology and the muscle testing, and I trust that. Because I know that was aware of that before meeting you, and I trust that even if I have some lingering thoughts or things come up, I'm like, if it's cleared at the core level, we're good to go. That's what's important.
Yeah. So, and can we take a moment to explain to people applied kinesiology and muscle testing? So these are applied kinesiology has been around probably for 25 years, maybe a little bit longer. So anyone who is interested can do some research on the internet. We commonly call it muscle testing these days. And your body is brilliant. Okay. Your body knows all. And so through muscle testing, we can communicate with the subconscious and ask questions to find out where the blocks are or what blocks might be there. So anyone who is interested in that, we don't have time for a demonstration. They can simply, do some Google searches and do some research on that. I'm certified in muscle testing, and I also I'm certified in self-muscle testing as well. So I can test on my own behalf. When you're here, when a client is here in my office, I muscle test on the client's body, using their arm. As you know, I ask you to hold your arm out and we test. But I can also, I am also trained to muscle test via a surrogate, and which means I can work with people remotely. So I've worked with people as far away as South America, and even I had a client from New Zealand, so it's pretty cool.
It's wonderful. Now, one of the things that you talk about that I really appreciate is you see unworthiness as the most limiting belief. And when I talked a lot on this podcast, I found throughout my life that I feel whatever's going on in our life, we can boil it down to not feeling good enough, worthy enough for love. So how does feeling unworthy, because I believe we all have it at different, as I've worked throughout my life, there are layers to it. But how does that lead to fear? Because fear stops us from creating the life we desire.
Right. So they're completely linked. Let's say, we'll call it shyness. Okay. So let's say a person is shy. They have a fear of walking into a room full of people. So that shyness can be, sometimes it's just a trait, a person might just be commonly shy. I'm using it more as a general term. But when that translates into unworthiness, it stops us in our tracks from achieving all kinds of things. So, maybe you want to go in and ask your boss for that raise that you deserve, but you don't feel worthy. Or, maybe you see, I don't know, maybe a car goes by and you say to yourself, wow, I'd love to own a car like that. But then this voice immediately, this voice in your subconscious comes up and says, you'll never be able to afford that.
Losing money because you aren't organized? Tired of spending hours looking for things? Stressed out? Go to reawakenyourbrilliance.com to learn how Julie Coraccio can support you.
Maybe you're stuck in a relationship, but you feel as though you don't deserve any better. So it can surface, it can raise its ugly head in a million ways, and then it'll stop you. It'll turn into fear. And fear is another one of those words that is very general. So I can't think of his name. Zukov, Gary Zukov says there are only two emotions, love and fear. And anything that is not love is fear. So, that encompasses a lot. Depression, anxiety, it just, the spectrum is just so huge. So what happens is fear just keeps us stuck. And we're not going to ask for that raise. We're not going to go out and open ourselves up to all the wonders that this world has to offer us because we're afraid.
Exactly. Now, I read a really interesting statistic recently, and it said something like 80% of our health challenges, traumas, issues, whatever you want to call them, are related to stress. So I'd like to know how limiting beliefs can cause us stress that eventually are going to lead to illness or disease.
Okay, so as you know, because we've been working together, and I talked to you a lot about the energy levels. Okay, so we are here to explore and experience all of our energy levels. And so let me explain what I mean by that. Anyone who is familiar with Abraham Hicks knows about the emotional chart. There's 22 energy levels on the emotional chart, on the emotional scale, I should say. The energy levels that I talk about, there's only 7. So levels 1 and 2 are low vibration energies, and they are what we call catabolic. So when you're in those low vibration energies, you are actually in fight or flight mode, or what we call today fight, flight, or freeze mode. Okay, so the very bottom level is victim mentality. So, and we all know people like this. They've let they've allowed themselves to become so stressed that now they're chronically ill. They're out on disability. They feel like, why should I even bother trying? The world is an unfair place and I'm never going to win. So that person just feels victimized. Okay. And then level 2 is anger and conflict. So the great thing about that is when you step out of level 1 and into level 2, you take action. So that's more of, well, I'll show you, I'm going to prove you're wrong. And that anger, it's good because it gets you off the couch, but both of those, when you're in either one of those energy levels, your body is releasing cortisol and adrenaline. And when your body is releasing those hormones, they are damaging your body. So unfortunately, we live in a society where 85 to 90% of the population is living in catabolic energy. And life is stressful, but we add to that by stripping away the joy out of life. So, if I'm working with someone who is chronically ill, some things that I will tell them to do is turn off the news, watch more comedy, because when you're laughing, okay, you can't be stressed and laughing at the same time. It's just simply impossible. So when you're laughing, you turn on the anabolic energy, which shuts off the release of the cortisol and adrenaline, and it allows your body to begin to heal. So to answer your question, we just live in a stressful society. I personally know people who have, the news is on constantly. They're on social media constantly, and most of it is negative.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. And I think it's so important to be aware of that, because our illness does come from stress, whether or not we realize it. But I don't think most people would make that connection of feeling like a victim and how it's affecting their health. And this kind of, I think, would be a nice segue. If you haven't listened to the interview with Bruce Lipton from last month, check it out. For those of you like shorter podcasts, I just encourage you can listen to it a couple of different days. But how does your work, we're going to talk about PSYCH K'ed specifically in a moment, but how does what you're doing relate to what Bruce talks about?
I just love Bruce. He was a pioneer, and he discovered way back that we have the ability to change our DNA. We are not a victim to our genes. We all know that person who is fearful of getting breast cancer because her mother had breast cancer, her sister had breast cancer, her grandmother had breast cancer. Bruce has proven that we have the ability to change our DNA. And so that person does not have to be a victim to that DNA. Bruce says in his book, there are several methods of changing your DNA. His favorite happens to be PSYCH K'ed. And it's through that book that I actually discovered PSYCH K'ed, and then was just so impressed with it, decided to become a practitioner. Oftentimes when people get sick, they blame outside forces. And, the viewers, our listeners should know that I was chronically ill for 9 years and I was out on disability. Okay. So I was in that victim place. And, so I've been there. I know what it feels like. Through PSYCH K'ed, we can uncover where these blocks, where these limiting beliefs are coming from, and then we can shift them.
Well, I found.
So did I?
Yeah, no, I want to go in a little more detail about PSYCH K'ed, but I also found out about PSYCH K'ed through reading Bruce's book, because I'm like, oh, I've forgotten this great interview. I want to read the book. He mentioned that. Then I found the website and found you. And what was important to me, you sent me these 3 little short videos. And so the one where the baby's in utero and the parents are fighting, and you see how the baby reacts. And the other thing that was important to me was the founder, the originator, creator, talked about the spiritual aspect as long as the science aspect. So I'm all about spirituality, but this way of rewiring the brain is how I described it. And I said, if I'm wrong, that you would correct me. But in my simple terms, it's rewiring the brain. And I felt there'd been too much influence on me. And, we looked at the things from the past, and that my brain needed to be rewired. So that's how if I were to describe it in a nutshell, that's how I would phrase it.
Yeah, that's and that's exactly what we're doing. We're actually reprogramming the brain. Okay, so the brain is like, your subconscious is like the mainframe computer. It's running, it's constantly running. And so what we do when we do a PSYCH K'ed balance is we actually reprogram the computer, and we change the program. Yes, so and you brought up the video that I sent you about the fetus in utero. So we know scientifically that we actually, our programming actually begins before we're even born.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't mean to scare people, but we know this. So So I was working with a client, and she told me that she had slightly deformed hips. She told me that her hips were turned slightly inward when she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my studies and because of my work, I know that hips represent moving forward. And so I said to her, well, that's interesting. Do you know what your mom was going through when she was pregnant with you? And she said, yes, she was getting ready to leave my alcoholic father.
Mm-hmm.
So, here you have this woman, she's pregnant, her husband's an alcoholic. We're talking 45 years ago when things were more limiting for women, especially pregnant, single women. So I'm sure her mom had a tremendous fear about moving forward. And so my client, she picked up on that energy and that fear that her mom had, and consequently was born with slightly deformed hips.
Which you can completely understand based on that background.
Yes. And so, and I want to interject here that sometimes we don't know. Okay. So let's say she was adopted. Let's say she was given up for adoption. She may never know why her hips are like that. And that's the great thing about PSYCH is we don't need to know. We just need to know what the problem is. We don't have to go back and spend years in therapy digging up stuff. All we really need to know is, what do you think your limiting beliefs are, and how would you rather feel instead? And then we can proceed.
Thanks for bringing that up, because I think that's such an important point, because we can get sidetracked and get caught up in the story. And then that takes us away from the healing or worrying, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I know we were working on something and you were like, and I said, I don't care. We don't need to know where it comes from. We know it's there. Let's move it.
Right.
Like, I don't want to, expend any energy on that. And I think when I first started my healing process, it was important for me to know everything. And now I'm like, I don't want to know the details. Just clear it.
Yeah. Now, some clients, they do need to get it out,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's fine too. I mean, sometimes I have clients who come in and they just break down, and I allow that because that's the release of energy. So anytime, I'm a big proponent of crying, because crying is a release of energy. And if you've got that much stuff going on and you feel like you need a good cry, I mean, we all feel better after a good cry. And I'm going to say this again, when I was talking about the energy levels, we're human. We're here to experience all the energy levels. And even in the Bible, even Jesus Christ got angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because he was human.
Right.
And so there's, I don't want anybody to think that any of these emotions are bad, because they're not. It only becomes a problem when you let them go for too long.
Or stay stuck there.
Yes. So that's what I say to my clients. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to have a pity party. The question is, how long are you going to stay there? Because if you're going to tell me that you're staying there for, 3 days, 3 weeks, that's not good. We don't want that.
I've noticed that I've cleared a lot of victim energy, but what I've noticed for me is it's more subtle now. Once I did like some major work, it'd be like red flag waving in my space. And now I have to pay more attention, because it'll be like, oh, I think we were talking about something, and I had an aha moment. Oh, I'm seeing myself as a victim. Like, I wasn't aware of that, and that's okay. But just the more, there are always layers to clear.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why you work with a practitioner, because it's hard, like one of the best testimonials I ever got was from another, she was an executive coach, and she said, and I love this, even the best brain surgeon in the world cannot operate on himself.
Yes.
Okay, so I see things in my clients that they simply can't see. And this is for the ladies that are listening. It's like walking out of the restroom with your skirt caught in your pantyhose. You know, everybody knows but you.
Right, right.
Do you keep saying you'll declutter, get organized, or pursue your dreams someday, but someday hasn't come? Learn how Julie Coraccio can support you at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
So
I would love for you to share a success story, because you work with a lot of people who are chronically ill. And, you know, I have a friend that I've learned a lot because she is chronically ill, and sometimes it's all in your head, you're making it up, blah, blah, blah. So if you can just share a little success story, that'd be fantastic.
yeah, probably. Well, I've got several. You know, I was working with a client, and I really have to keep confidentiality
Of
here.
course.
So I'm going to try to protect even sexual identity. This client had an accident and broke the neck
Oh, wow.
and was rendered quadriplegic. So we have to say, you know, anyone who's listening who believes that we create our own reality, we have to stop and say, well, you know, how did I attract this? The client had quite a tragic story. He was molested as, you know, before the age of 2 by a grandparent, and couldn't let that go. I mean, you know, just a ton of anger, blame. And then, of course, the accident happened. So then on top of that, we had trauma. So we had the trauma from the sexual abuse, and then we had the trauma from the accident. So we were able to release all of that, or let me rephrase that. We were able to release 95% of that, which opened up room for huge changes in that client's life. Another client suffered brain damage, not only through PSYCH K'ed, but through the other practices that I teach: visualization, meditation, nutrition, exercise. Healing requires a well-rounded approach.
Yeah.
And through all of that particular client, the doctors refer to the client as a walking miracle, because we literally reversed the damage, the brain damage, and the dead areas in the brain. So those are probably two of my biggest success stories.
Rewire and reverse that. I completely believe that. And, you know, I brought up my fear when I interviewed Bruce about getting Alzheimer's. And I had someone dear to me, who was like a second mother, who had stage 4 lung cancer. And they kept telling her, you're going to die, you're going to die. And then, you know, I'd go with her to doctor's appointment. They're like, we give up. We don't know when you're going. But part of it, she's just like, I'm not ready to go. I've got stuff to do. And she had an amazing support system. So she didn't take in, when at first, when we're like, you have 6 months or whatever, she's like, no, I'd have a lot more than that. And
Right.
so I've seen it in action. And that just proves, I mean, and this is someone who didn't do anything, but just had her positivity and her support network and beliefs were so strong.
Exactly.
Do that.
Yeah. So our beliefs are everything. And so this goes all the way back to Henry Ford's quote: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Medical science, I have mixed feelings about medical science. They save lives every single day. They create miracles every single day. They can replace the heart, for God's sake. I mean, that's miraculous. But on the other side of the scale, personally, I don't think it's right to tell someone, based on statistics, you only have X amount of time left. It's my personal opinion that it would serve the person better if the doctor said, Well, in most cases, a patient in your condition only lives X amount of time, but that doesn't necessarily apply to you. Okay. So like when my mom had cancer, the doctor told her she had 6 months. And in my mom's world, the doctor and the priest were never wrong. So it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And 6 months later, she was dead. So my question is, why not say it could be 6 months or it could be 6 years? Because that plants a different seed. Okay, that plants a different seed. And sometimes once those seeds get planted, that's it. So, the friend that you're talking about, she didn't care what the doctor said. She had her own plans.
She did.
And her own belief. And our beliefs are everything. Our beliefs are everything.
They really are.
Yeah.
So on that note, people, don't think I was going to let you slide because we have a guest on today. What are some take actions that people can take?
Okay, so the first take action that I would love for people to do is to start paying attention to that little voice in the back of your mind. Sometimes we refer to listen for that voice. Again, I'm going to go back to the example of maybe you deserve a pay increase at work. And listen to that little voice that says, you're never going to get that. They don't appreciate you. That little voice will pop up many times throughout the day. You're not good enough. You'll never have the money for that. You're not worthy of a relationship like that. You'll never be able to retire. So start paying attention to that little voice. And when you hear it, challenge it. When you are in a low-lying energy level, when you're feeling fear, anger, frustration, stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking about? And then change that thought. So as an example, a very good friend of mine, fellow practitioner, spoke to her last week, and she had just finished a horrible customer service experience, and she was angry. And because she's a fellow practitioner, she understands that when she's at that level, it's releasing cortisol and adrenaline, and it's damaging her immune system. And so we talked. I said, okay, you're allowed to feel that way now, but how long are you going to stay there? That's your choice. That's always a choice.
Yeah. Yes.
And sometimes we just, we've all said, I'm so angry I can't even think straight. And it's true. You're so angry that your mind has taken over control. So stop, take a deep breath, calm down, and turn on some comedy, pet your cat, pet your dog. Go look at pictures of your children or your grandchildren. Do something that's going to shift that energy, because there's all kinds of ways that you can shift that energy, and you can do it fairly quickly. And the last tip would be to, when you identify that you have limiting beliefs, develop some affirmations and start saying those affirmations. Now, sometimes a lot of times, people make mistakes when using affirmations. So affirmations need to be positive and, present tense, and they really should pack a punch. So as opposed to saying, I won't get cancer, you want to say something like, my body is healthy and strong, okay? Starting an affirmation with the words I am is very powerful. I am healthy and strong. I do have a healthy immune system. And then once you have those affirmations in place, say them out loud. Our thoughts are energy. We know that. Quantum physics now proves everything's energy. It cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed. So your thoughts are energy. Your voice is also energy. So, when I hear friends say negative things, or, you see it on Facebook a lot, I can't get out of my own way, and I immediately think, from your lips to God's ears. So watch what you say. Watch what you say. Speak in positive terms. Okay. So those are my 3 tips. Listen for that little voice in the back of your head so that you can identify those limiting beliefs. When you're in a low-lying energy vibration, identify and acknowledge that you're there, because you're human and it's gonna happen. And then pull yourself out of it by doing something positive, something calming, soothing. And then the 3rd is to develop affirmations, but make sure that they're good affirmations, make sure they're worded properly, and say them out loud. And if all of that doesn't work, then I highly recommend contacting a psych practitioner and getting some balancing done.
So on that note, tell us where people can find out more information about you. And I know that you're offering a free consult for our listeners and viewers. So please tell everyone about that.
Yes, I am. They can go to my website. It is my name, teresabruni.com/clutter. And I'll have information on there. So I would, of course, I'd love to invite everyone, but of course my time is limited. So I will take as many people as I can. There'll be a form there that they can fill out, and the form will come in. My assistant and I will review those, and then we'll send them a link where they can schedule online for a half an hour. During that half an hour, we're just going to talk. We're going to find out what they think their limiting beliefs are. They can see how they feel about working with me, and I can also determine whether, I think we're a good fit. And then, different people, I love to interview people because different people have different needs. So, and because I'm highly intuitive, I can pretty much determine fairly quickly, how much work a person is going to do. I love success stories. So I don't want someone coming in for one session and then leaving and thinking that that's it. The originator of PSYCH K'ed, Rob Williams, says that the average person needs about 7 sessions, because we're all, we all have layers of stuff that need to be peeled back. But I'd love to hear from your listeners, and I so appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a real honor.
Well, it's been wonderful working with you, and thank you for that. And just so people know, I will put a link on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, it can click straight there, and we'll also put a link in the liner notes. And on my website, I always post the episode, so there'll be numerous ways you have links that can click you and take you right there. On our next episode, we're talking about being on autopilot. Go out, clear the clutter to create the life you choose, deserve, and desire.
Ready to live a more joyful and fulfilling life? Sign up for our newsletter and receive a free copy of 10 Steps to Clearing Clutter Inside and Out. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out. See you next Tuesday at 1 p.m.